The system keeps us not only financially illiterate, but also financially stupid. Mark Twain famously said, "It ain't what you know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." In other words, it's important to learn about money, but equally important to unlearn much of what you might have been taught by a society that wants you to conform to its traditions. Society teaches us that debt is bad. This is strange considering that most high net worth individuals are also high debt worth individuals. The truth is that debt needs to be handled with a great deal of care and control, but as long as debt is used strategically to invest in something that will cover the interest plus more, then borrowing money can be like printing money, especially if money is depreciating. Debt enables you to invest in multiple businesses at once and buy multiple assets at once, which when done correctly can get you a lot richer a lot faster. Unlike other investments, you can utilize the power of debt to buy property, meaning it's much easier to scale quickly. It's impossible to get a mortgage to invest in the stock market because no lender will be prepared to risk their money. You also can't get a mortgage to invest in gold or cryptocurrency, but lenders will back property because it's bricks and mortar. Unlike gold, property can't be stolen from thieves. Even if somebody burned down your house and you didn't have any building insurance, the land itself would likely be more than the house itself. Let's say you had £100,000 in fiat money, so you wanted to invest in gold. This gold would likely increase around 10% per year, meaning that after 10 years, your gold may be worth £200,000, potentially more if inflation went out of control. However, if you invested that £100,000 into a property, you'd be able to buy a property worth £400,000 if you utilised a mortgage at 75% loan to value. If your property doubled over the next 10 years, your £100,000 would now own an asset worth £800,000. Albeit you'd have a small mortgage, but you'd have 5 times your money as opposed to 2 times your money. And this is how people become millionaires by accident, because they bought a house and waited. And as the saying goes, don't wait to buy real estate and wait. Property is one of the only investments you can use to legally avoid paying taxes to. When your stocks and shares, gold, cryptocurrency go up in value, the only way to see that profit is to sell. And this incurs a huge capital gains tax bill. However, if your property goes up in value, you can refinance. Let's imagine you bought a property for £500,000 using £200,000 cash and the rest on a mortgage. If down the line, the property went up to £1 million, you could release £750,000 in equity with a new mortgage and then use that equity to buy more properties. And they can only tax you on profit, but released equity in this way is seen as debt, and debt is tax-free. The price of money is shrinking around 10% every year, which is terrible for savers, but brilliant for rich people who use money as debt. Think about it. If you have £10,000 worth of good debt, why would you rush to pay it off knowing that every year the debt is shrinking by itself, especially when the debt is being used to make money? The lender is now slave to the borrower. The Bible says that the borrower is slave to the lender, but that's assuming that debt was backed by gold. If debt is fake money that's shrinking day by day, then the lender is arguably slave to the borrower. While most rich people use debt as their super weapon, they're well educated and smart. Working hard, saving money, staying out of debt is not bad advice for financially illiterate people. But for the educated, debt can be your best friend. In 2021, I was in Ghana viewing some potential real estate complexes to invest in myself. And I'd received a message from a lady who'd seen that I was in Ghana. She said, "Samuel, I know a man called Freedom Jacob Caesar. He's redeveloping Africa and he wants to see you." And my wife, Amanda, who was raised in Zimbabwe, happened to be sat next to me. And I read the message to her with the small off chance that she might have heard of this Jacob Caesar Freedom guy. And Amanda was like, "Are you joking?" And within minutes, all my in-laws and all the family there, they're like, "If Freedom Jacob Caesar wants to meet you, you need to go meet him." I was like, okay. I didn't know who this Freedom guy was, but based on the response of my entire family and friends, I decided I have to go see who this guy is. So I met Freedom at one of his many luxury hotels that he'd built. And Freedom toured me around this hotel. And oh my goodness, I was so impressed with not just the size and the magnitude of the building, but also his attention to detail and his vision. And after we finished the tour, He took me out with his security team to his next huge project, then to another, then to another. And in the car, I was Googling him, and I realized that we were just scratching the surface. We went back to his head office for some lunch. He was so kind to me, gave me some excellent business advice, and Freedom became a mentor to me. And after lunch, he took me to a huge room at the back of his office where he'd built a mini version of all the buildings he'd built across Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana. It was just staggeringly impressive, especially considering that he started his empire from scratch with nothing. I can't say too much about what he told me because it might be confidential, but he showed me his mini version of the future developments that he intended to build in his lifetime, and it was mind-blowingly staggering. I was in awe of his vision and his ability to make things happen. And in Ghana, interest rates are around 30% per year, which means if you borrow 1 million cedis, which is the currency there, the minimum interest-only repayments will be 300,000 cedis per year. And I assumed that these rich developers and investors were doing everything cash. They've got deep pockets, and surely no investor will make sense of borrowing money with a 30% interest rate. I was wrong. Many of these super rich investors were taking out loans and mortgages, and I asked one very smart, risk-averse, sophisticated, successful millionaire investor, I said, how are you making sense of borrowing millions and millions of cedis when you're paying such high interest? And he laughed and said, it's all about timing. I'm like, what do you mean timing? 30% is 30%. He said, the government of Ghana is printing so much money that money is becoming worthless. Sure, I have to pay 30% interest, but I'll be paying the interest in money that is being printed. Next year, in 2022, CDs will be down 20% alone. So the longer I don't pay it back, the smaller the loan gets. Meanwhile, my apartment complexes will be consistently increasing in value, and the cash flow will more than cover the interest. Whilst this kind of made sense to me, I still couldn't get my head around it. This man is smart, sophisticated. I challenged him. I said, sure, you can't rely though on the central bank printing so much money that your debt will depreciate over time. That seems risky. And he said, the government is banking on this themselves. It makes the rules and it decides what happens. And the investor is much richer than I am. And he was right. The bank did print more money, and that following year, inflation was 31.71%, meaning that all the debt that he'd just taken on had just shrank by 31.71%. And I used this same strategy in the UK. Ghana's inflation has previously been more reckless than the UK's, so I've not been able to justify 30% interest payments yet. However, the British government is currently printing substantially more money than any other African government. So the conclusion is, as the government continues to print money, money depreciates. Therefore, so does debt. My grandma bought a house for £2,500 in the 1960s. She paid a deposit of £1,000 and she had a mortgage of £1,500. At the time, the average gross salary for a female was only £595 per year. My grandma spent years living below her means and saving 10% of her income to pay off her mortgage. And I remember her telling me only a few years before she died, she said, I wish I hadn't bothered now. If I'd just paid the interest, avoided scraping each month to pay off the capital, I could have paid it off in today's money. It was only $1,500. At the time, that was an awful lot of money. The lesson is to utilize debt as your friend, not silly debt. I'm talking about smart debt.